everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. I am Liza Posas, Head of Research Services and Archives at the Autry Museum of the American West. First, I would like to acknowledge the traditional caretakers of this land, the Gabrielino Tongva people. I would also like to thank the Autry's generous donors and members for making this program happen. I'm honored, along with the Board of Trustees, to welcome you to the Autry Artists Salon on the Power of Images, Super Indian, and Native Representation. Today, joining me are the Autry's Artistic Director, DeLanna Studi, and Arigon Starr, creator of the comic superhero Super Indian. Before we go any further, I would like to mention that if you have questions during our conversation, please enter them at any time in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. Arigon Starr is an enrolled member of the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma, and she is an award-winning musician, actor, and playwright, plus a renowned comic book writer and artist. Her work with Native voices includes her comedy musical, The Red Road, and the radio comedy, Super Indian. A former Tulsa Artist Fellow, she creates the romantic comedy Brown Dance for the Oklahoma Indian Theater Company in 2018 during her fellowship. DeLanna Studi is a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and we are honored to have her as the new Artistic Director of Native Voices at the Autry. She has over 25 years of experience as a performer, storyteller, educator, facilitator, advocate, and activist. Her theater credits include the first national Broadway tour of Tony Award and Pulitzer Prize winning play, August Osage County, off-Broadway's Gloria, A Life of the Darrell Raw Theater, Informed Consent at the Duke Theater on 42nd Street, and regional theaters, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Portland Center Stage, Cornerstone, and Indiana Repertory Theater. DeLanna originated roles in over 18 world premieres, including 14 Native productions. A pivotal moment in her career was writing and performing And So We Walked, an artist's journey along the Trail of Tears, based on retracing her family's footsteps along the Trail of Tears with her father. I feel fortunate that I was given the opportunity to moderate this discussion. I became familiar with both of you, DeLanna and Arigon, through the archives, although DeLanna, you and I worked together, but I did get to see sort of their repertoire of work through the Native Voices archives, and I'm proud to say that the Autry is the home of this unique, wonderful resource, the Native Voices archives, that basically documents the 26 plus years of this repertory theater and ensemble, and the playwrights from Native Voices in the exhibit. The female artists and playwrights from the Native Voices archives are also featured in an exhibit I curated, which is now up. You can go and visit it at the Autry, make your reservations. The exhibit is called What's Her Story? Women in the Archives. We couldn't highlight all the female playwrights in that exhibit because there's just so many. As Randy Reinholtz, one of the founders of Native Voices, said that, Native Voices was an early adopter of producing female playwrights. We also had something close to a 50-50 gender equality of productions from the beginning. So from like 26 years ago. Women's stories found in the Native Voices archives written. We also have one of the things that we did to highlight other playwrights from the archive is create a blog story, Women's Stories Found in the Native Voices Archives, written by Victoria Bernal, where we talk about DeLanna and Arigon and all the other wonderful playwrights from Native Voices. So I'm excited to delve in deeper and talk to you both about how your personal journey and influences shape your work. And speaking of the archives, Cesar, can you toss up the archive images that you have of the original? So this was the program of Super Indian that was performed at the Autry Museum of the American West. And it was known as the Autry National Center at that time. It was 2007. And can I see the second image, please? And there's the original cast of the playwright. You might notice the woman on your right, our own DeLanna Studi. So Arigon and DeLanna, thank you for joining us for our Artist Salons. Again, if you have any questions during our conversation, please enter them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. The Autry Museum of the American West represents something slightly different to each of you who visits us physically and virtually. For me, Native Voices tells compelling stories with Native representation on the Native American experience, and archiving them in the Autry's collections are one of the great defining strengths of our institution. So without further ado, I want to just go ahead and get started. Since we've been talking about Native Voices, DeLanna, I'd like to ask if you could just, explain the wonderfulness of Native Voices and a little bit of its history.
Absolutely. I don't think I would have the career that I have now if it wasn't for Native Voices. In 1998, it was founded by Jean Bruce Scott and Randy Reinholz, and it found a home at the Autry. And around that time, I first moved to Los Angeles, and my father always said, whenever you get to a place, find the Native people, because when you find whose land you're on, you'll find home. And so I did, and that was the first Native organization I found. They became my home, my community, and it was the first time I ever gotten to perform work by Native playwrights and be seen as a Native actor, which was wonderful. And, the one thing about Native Voices is we are the only equity house, we're the only union house that produces and develops new plays written by Indigenous playwrights. And because of that, we do have a lot of wonderful actors and playwrights who have found success on our stages and have gone beyond. So that's my story about Native Voices and how I got to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. And Arigon, how was your experience with Super Indian? Was that the first time you joined Native Voices?
Oh, no.
So tell us your story with Native Voices.
Well, okay, it all goes back to the original advisory board. There was a beautiful woman, and I think she's still around somewhere, Marjorie Tannen. Miss Marjorie knew me from way back in the day when I was working with, I'm going to date myself, the American Indian Registry for the Performing Arts, which was founded by actor Will Sampson back in the 80s. And in the late 80s, they were still around and trying to get people work and also trying to help shape our community so they knew what was expected of them when they walked into an audition or if they got hired or how should you be on the set, et cetera, et cetera. I thought it was a great program. Marjorie is part of that group. Marjorie knew I was a singer, and Marjorie kept on me. She said, I love your performances, but you know what? I think they need somebody like you at Native Voices, because Marjorie had become involved with the group since the beginning, and I didn't know about them. Can you believe it? I was in LA. I didn't even know. And because I was doing music and I was touring and I was always on the road, but Marjorie convinced me to audition. So I walked into the audition, and I remember Jean and Randy running the thing. And then I walked up and I said, hey, I haven't auditioned since high school. I don't know what I'm doing. So I read, and then I heard nothing. And that's the life of an actor. I think about 2 years passed until one day, randomly, I got an email from Jean, and she said, I think we found something for you. And I was in a staged reading of a Shirley Chichu play that was about boarding schools. And it was pretty it was true life. It was humorous. It was also very frightening. But I was on stage for the first time, and it was a staged reading. Thank goodness I didn't have to learn my lines. So that's how I got involved. And from there, other productions came, and I think I'd done a couple of productions, the Kino and Teresa, and also Please Do Not Touch the Indians by Joseph Dandurand. God, my memory. Anyway, yeah, so that's how long I've been with the group. And then finally it came to, hey, we've got somebody to do radio. Let's try that. And I said, why not?
Yeah, that's a great segue into, I have two questions to ask. Is you did choose images for us to look at and examine and talk about further. And so, just sort of a looming question is why these images? Why, there's so many images in your comic book, so why you chose this top 7 or top 10? But then if you can go into the creation of Super Indian or the origin story of Super Indian.
Yes. Now, since we're all friends here, we can talk about how this actually started. It was a conversation on a train journey from Brisbane, Australia to the coast. We were all going to go to the beach, and there was a native Indigenous playwright group that went from California and other places to Brisbane, Australia to work with the native people there. And on this train ride, I was just, kind of looking around, had a sketchbook, and I was talking to playwright Drew Hayden Taylor. And I was in one of his plays, The Buzzget Blues, and he always was, really kind to me, and we laughed a lot. And I kept telling him, "Your mom is a star. I don't know why you don't put her on stage." But we were talking, and we started talking about why aren't there any native heroes? I mean, why is this? And I've always asked myself that question because I have loved comics since I was a child, and every comic has some kind of native character, and usually it is something, it doesn't even look like us, doesn't sound like us, don't dress like us, and highly disappointing. I know, DeLanna, if you want to jump in on there, it's like, ugh.
Maybe this would be a good time to throw up the cover, the first image we have of volume 1. And one of my favorite things are the first 2 pages of this comic book, where you have this Tarzan looking character in a loincloth talking about this super Indian who's in touch with nature and things alive and not alive, and basically ending it. But this isn't the comic book.
Yes. His story is not told within these pages, because that was actually dialogue and description from the very first Super Indian radio show that was produced for the National Audio Theatre Festival in 2006. And again, when this experiment started, that little germ of an idea from that playwrights conference in Australia became a 10-minute radio play that was on stage, live actors, live sound effects, and live on National Public Radio. It was like wild. So I know how to draw. I've been drawing for a while. I started drawing when I was a kid, and I also done work for Disney way back in the day. And, I thought, well, what if I made this a real deal? After the first series at the Autry premiered, where we saw that wonderful program, I still had scripts, I still had stories, and I wanted to tell more about this. So using the drawing skills I had, I drew that cover, had a friend make that logo, and off to the races we went. It started as a webcomic first, and finally in 2012 it became Super Indian Volume 1, which encompassed about 3 different issues, which are about 23 pages. I always tell people it's 69 pages of full color magic. And it was based on the radio plays. So we can go on to the next one if you like.
The next one. Head of a person.
Yes, this is the evil nemesis of Super Indian. Well, she has many, like superheroes do. There's always got to be a antagonist-protagonist situation. This is Wampum Bags. And again, that is a play on, wampum is money, right? Yeah. He wants money, right? Yeah. So instead of money bags, he's wampum bags. He has stolen a wampum belt. He's gained some powers, and he wants to take that reservation down because he is convinced that there is more to be had.
And before we go on to the next image, there is a Q&A that came in, or a question that came in. So we're going to jump back a little bit to when you're talking about your cast experience with Native Voices. And this is a simple question like, how do you become a cast member of Native Voices? So maybe it's for both of you.
Well, every time we develop a play or produce a play, we do a casting notice. And recently, because of the internet, we've been able to do them on our social media. And so if you follow Native Voices on our Facebook page or on Instagram, you'll receive that notice. And you do not have to be a union actor to audition. We just ask that you put yourself on tape and send it to us. We want 2 contrasting monologues under 2 minutes apiece. And sometimes we ask for a little bit extra depending on what plays we're working on. But it's an open process, and we would love for as many new actors to reach out to us, as many as we can get, honestly. That's the great thing about working in this COVID world right now, is we have access to so many areas we didn't have access to before.
Yeah, that's great. That's great that it's open and there's not that obstacle of being union or being, having representation or an agent or what have you. That's great. Now jumping back to the Super Indian conversation, speaking of wampum belts, wampum bags.
Yeah. And his wampum belt.
Inspired by wampum belts. So when looking at your comics, one of the things that I thought was interesting were your villains, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea that when you were looking, in one of the essays you write about yourself and the start of Super Indian, you say that you were routinely disappointed by the stereotypical depictions of the Native American Indians in the comics that you had before you. So when I saw the names of the villains, I thought, oh, this is very interesting. This kind of rides with that whole stereotypical depiction, and wanted to know wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, or if that is, if we read that right.
Oh, you totally read that right. And what I'm trying to bring to the universe of Super Indian is to show there are a lot of outside forces that our Native people have to deal with routinely on a daily basis. It's just living. There's always the person that comes up to me, who doesn't, are you from somewhere else? Where are you from? And having to answer that question. And then, oh, so you're Native. Does that mean that you get free stuff? And oh, I have a Cherokee grandmother that was a princess. So, using all of these things that, get thrown to us routinely on that basis, I'm like, okay, so there might be somebody that might be a cultural appropriator, or maybe somebody who really wants to be Indian. And in the case of one of our episodes that we will hear next week, The Curse of Blood Quantum. Blood quantum? What does that mean? Well, what does that mean? Well, if you want to be a tribal citizen in many, many nations, you need to have some kind of a fractional degree of, how much Indian are you? And that actually divides communities, it divides families, it divides artists sometimes. It's like, well, I'm more Indian than you are. So I wanted to talk about that. And in this particular respect, Blood Quantum is a vampire that wishes to become a full-blood Indian by biting other full-bloods.
Yeah, we'll talk more about, we'll see blood in a little bit. Yeah, I feel that appropriation is a theme that I see within your work. And one of my favorite songs that I just listened to is Indian Eyes, which comes from the Red Road.
Yes.
It's punk song, Indian Eyes. And again, it's, you see a person, you really are great at creating this character that is a person you might have met at one point. So I actually did recommend that song to a punk DJ just a couple days ago. So I hope
but I love that song.
It's for those that, this doesn't have to be an inside joke. It is on the Arigon Starr website, and her tracks are there. So listen to Indian Eyes after this.
Yes.
For the whole soundtrack, it's great. So now you've got volume 2 of Super Indian. Is there between the volume 1 and volume 2, are there different evolutions or developments that's not only happened within the characters, but just in society in general?
Yes.
So,
Gosh, yeah. And I personally had an artistic revolution where, still going to Comic-Cons and doing reconnaissance for myself was like, how do I make this better? How does this? Okay, so one of the artists I talked to and went to a panel for said, I swear to you, you need to go digital, because if you do not go digital, you're going to lose time. This is the way to get work done fast. And I was already coloring digitally, but I started to draw digitally, and that changed my world. Because I was doing it the old way on Bristol board with pen and ink, and so I'm telling you.
The cover of volume 2 is your digital artwork?
Yes, that is digital.
Cesar?
Yeah. And you can see the improvement. I know you can, because there was ways to set things back and to blur and to, almost kind of sample in a way. But I was able to do this in half the time of doing it the old way, which was Bristol board, a blue line pencil, a regular pencil over that, and ink over that, and then scan it and stitch it together and then color it. It was fantastic.
Art before this, or was?
Yeah. I used to. Well, I never took art in school. I wasn't one of those. I'm not a scholar per se, and I applaud all scholars. I'm envious of you, but that's not. I'm autodidactic. That is the way I roll. So I
Yeah.
taught myself how to do all this stuff, including how to draw digitally, how to color digitally. I had very, very good mentors. Brian and Christy Miller from Hi-Fi Color for Comics, Brian Haberlin, who is a digital artist, and then going back and looking at my old comic books and saying, I love Neil Adams, I love John Byrne. There's all these artists that I just adored and wanted my comics to look like, but I did not draw in that style originally. I always tell people my real art looks like Matt Groening in The Simpsons. If I was going to do my like, I'm just going to draw it like right now and put it out, that's what it would look like. But this is a style that I really wanted to appropriate for myself, because it was something I'd never seen from our artist. I was like, why can't we have art like that?
Yeah.
So,
and say sorry, I apologize. Our wonderful production man behind the scenes, I realized I went out of order with the images. So I missed the flying super Indian image. Would you like to talk about that image and why you chose
absolutely.
that image?
Yes. Again, this harks back to all of your Superman, any flying superhero. And, Super Indian does have the power of flight, but he does not discover this right away. And I think my fun with his character is like has ever evolving superpowers. We don't know what he's going to have next week.
Cheese, which I will want to talk about the cheese in a bit. So you do have a new female character in Volume 2, Phoebe, who is adorable. She's a fangirl of Twilight-esque.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. Never at dusk.
Actually, I have a question about it, because it's kind of associated with the cheese question I'll be asking later on. But the character, I know we have Lucas and the other man in the blue shirt.
Yes, Clive. Lucas and Clive.
Does something in there like, I don't get your native humor, and he just ends up giving the guy whatever. So did that come from a personal experience, or did you feel like, this is the humor there is, you're kind of asking people to walk that line and trying to get native humor in reading these comics, and and kind of giving a nod to that kind of mentality?
Absolutely. And that has always been important in every genre that I've been in music and writing plays and now comic books. The humor comes along with us wherever we go. And if you know Native people like you do, we like to laugh. My goodness. Life is hard. And, when you're like, this really sucks, you really want to laugh. And we want to laugh hard. And we usually laugh at ourselves.
Oh, yes.
DeLanna, do you have anything to add to that? You've been part of Native Voices for a very long time, and when I was looking through the videos of the archives, it's like we can pretty much find you in almost every other production. So you have a lot of experience with particularly the humor found in a lot of the plays.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the great thing about what Arigon has done, is because she's created these wonderful superheroes that are also hilarious. And when people think of Native Americans, they don't normally think of us as, well, that humor is not the first thing that comes to mind. Let's just say that. And so to have a superhero that looks like us, to talk like us, to live like us, and of course to have that humor, it's like coming home to me. And so one of the jokes my father always said is, you'll know if a Native family likes you because they'll tease you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know that they don't like you if they're just nice to you.
So true.
So you're going around like, oh, that person's mean to me.
Yeah.
But you're part of the family when we start teasing you. That's how we get through. When I asked my father, I said, how do you think we survived the Trail of Tears? What made us so resilient? He said it was our humor, and I believe that. Mm-hmm. I think it's gotten us through so many times, and that was one of the reasons why we chose Super Indian for this year's spring production. Is if anyone needed a break, anyone needed a bit of escapism, if anyone needed hope in this crazy world that we're in right now, it's all of us in this time of COVID. And so thank you, Arigon, for giving us this moment.
You're welcome.
And I do want to remind people that if you have a question, you are encouraged to ask your questions and put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window, or else we're just going to keep talking. But speaking of humor, I I think this could be a good time for my cheese question. So when I first listened to the volume one, and you said like he ate radioactive, am I giving a spoiler?
Oh no. It is known. It is known.
Commodity, or we called it government issued cheese. That I guffawed. I thought that was so funny, partly because it was a great part in the script, but it had a familiarity to me because I, you know, was around that kind of, that object a lot. And was gonna ask, or want to ask DeLanna if when you did the reading for it, did it strike you in that sort of familiar way?
Oh, yes. Commodity cheese is a legend in my household. It's not as popular as it used to be. Only select families get it. And so I only have one uncle that still gets commodity cheese. And so at Christmas, he raffles it off. And we will make tons of money because we're all putting the money in the hat with our name on it to get the commodity cheese. That's how important it is to my family. But I have fond memories of standing in line with my family to get it, and having the conversations that you're waiting in line, seeing all the community members you haven't seen in ages, or the people that you see every day, but you're still in the line to get the cheese and the rice and the powdered eggs. And that's where we caught up on all the news. It was better than watching any news channel or reading any gossip page. It was getting in line and hearing what was going on. So I have really fond memories of commodity cheese. And even though it's a cheese food product,
yes,
it's still one of my favorite cheese food products. I still miss it. Like, I can tell when someone has used the commodity cheese. It makes me very, very happy.
Commodity cheese is sort of the gateway to like Velveeta. And,
Velveeta doesn't even hold a candle.
Arigon, can you tell me, why you chose? I mean, I kind of get it, but I would love to hear your take on it. Like when you were thinking about and sketching it in that bus or train to Brisbane, you're like, yes, he bites commodity cheese, or did it take a while and it suddenly clicked?
No, it took a while because I knew he had to get them by some outside source. Otherwise, it would be confused with some kind of like, is this some kind of Native American hero legend? I knew I would get that. I was like, no, it's got to be ridiculous. However he gets power, it is by some bizarre means. And I went back to my favorite, Peter Parker from Spider-Man and the radioactive spider bite. And I thought, well, that was random. And I thought, well, commodity cheese is random. So that's how it happened. And I decided to call the element resium. Because, yeah.
It had a great ring. And I could see it in my mind's eye. As far as I know, that brick of commodity cheese is not yet illustrated. Right?
No, not yet. You see a glimpse of it in issue number 4, Technoskin, because there's some backstory about Derek Thunder, who is again another villain.
Yeah. Yes. And speaking of villains, the next image you have is of a hero dog and with the villain. So the DOG blood image.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, for those tuning in next week for the Curse of Blood Quantum, do know that DOG is always ahead of everybody. He is always ahead. He's super smart. He has the power of speech, but only Super Indian can hear him. And he's got a library card and he knows how to use it. His favorite pastime is reading about string theory in physics. He's that kind of a dog. However, Blood Quantum, again, the vampire that wants to become a full-blood Indian by biting other full-bloods, is going to have a Super Indian encounter. And let's just say it doesn't turn out well for either of them. So no spoilers.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Right.
Oh my goodness. One of the worst things just happened. I had a question queued up and it just left my brain.
I hate that.
I know. It's just like,
what happened?
So go back and say what you said. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, she's talking about the dog. No.
Yeah. And full-blood Indians and the vampires and why does he become a full-blood Indian, or why does he want to become a full-blood Indian? There are reasons. They're deep in their secret. However, they are all explained. You don't have to fill it in or kind of wonder how it happened. We will tell you that story.
Excellent.
Yes.
I do have a question for both of you, kind of again stepping out from Super Indian, but talking about your how your journeys and your influences in life shape your art. And both of you have done one woman shows. And I wonder, so, one woman shows come from all these various characters that you meet along the way, but do you ever see that, should these shows be reproduced again, that you would see them with a full cast of actors playing these characters, or do you feel that there's something there uh, in having it staying one woman show?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh my, I don't know. Um,
I have so many. It's like practical. I went to school for engineering, so I have this whole other like. Well, it's actually more practical to do a one-person show, but that's
Yeah,
not the reason
yeah.
to do it. Okay.
mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I phrased the question that way, because like, yeah, of course it's like easier, less baggage, less, things, but I'm like, if you had your druthers.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, um, that's one of the reasons why I became an actor was so I could play all the different parts and, be able to play a man and no one bats an eye, to be able to play a surgeon and no one's going to be like, she's 4 years old. She can't be a surgeon. It's like, yes, I can. It's the imagination. And so I love, I kind of get a little crazy. In my show, I play 27 different people. I didn't say I played them well, but I do play them. And it was fun for me. And it was a nice little break from the story that I was telling, because the story I'm telling is sometimes very painful. And so it's was my little way of coming out of it. Like the storyteller can be sad, but when she changes over to this person, this man is a happy-go-lucky guy. All of a sudden, there it is. And so for me, it's the magic of theater versus film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that I love people to come to the theater and for it to be theatrical. I love for people to come to the theater and feel like they're a child again and their imagination's at play. And so I do saying all that, I apparently, yeah, I like my one person show. However, if I could go back and redo it, I would have my father play himself, because that would make me very happy.
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
It would not make him happy. It'd make me very happy.
Indeed, indeed. Oh my gosh. And if I had my one person show to do again, I would totally cast 11 actors. That would be so much fun because our Red Road had a grandma, a little kid, a British punk rocker, some hardcore movement type liberator people, and, a country singer. It's like, what? Okay, yeah, why not? Oh, and of course, don't forget the Navajo fry cook, you know? It's fun to do those voices though. That I might miss that part. I
Yeah,
love and yeah, those
wonderful.
voices are still in there.
That's what I was thinking with both of you being multi talented, multi prismatic, dynamic actors and artists. That I would feel like your heads would feel like they're gonna explode at some point. You know, I feel like there's so much in there in both of your creative minds. That's not a question. That's just a comment. But I did remember the question that I was going to ask, because you mentioned the library and the dog having a library card. But what struck me about too your comics is that the places of community, the bingo hall, the library, the DVD, even though
hmm
sure. And so, what was your thought process in finding the settings for these different scenes?
Well, you use your own life, because when I come back to Okmulgee or I go down to where my dad came from in Shawnee, that's where Indians are. Back in the day, it was like, can I get, Legally Blonde, and could I also get Thunderheart? It's like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff you would rent on a Saturday night, because the native movies weren't on TV and there's far and few between. So you'll see people there. And the library, I love the library. Oh my gosh, a library junkie. That's where I lived. My entire childhood was in a library, and librarians are some of my very, very best friends. So that I give them mad props, and that's why they're in my book.
Thank you, thank you. And I very much like your librarian. He seems like a cool dude I want to hang out with. So I swear I was checking the Q&A box, and when I opened it, there are now 10 questions. So apologies if people were waiting, like Lisa asked the question. So I'll ask, what brings you the most joy about your work, Arigon? And how about you, DeLanna?
Let DeLanna go first.
Okay.
What brings me the most joy about my work? Um, Honestly, I do it. I always say I do it for selfish reasons because when I was a 12-year-old girl living in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, which I'm calling in from right now, hello, people. Um, no one ever came to my school to say, my culture was valid or that my language mattered or that I had stories that mattered. And so for me to be able to be in a position where I can go out and talk to different Native people, especially the youth, and tell them not only do your stories matter, we need them right now more than
Mm-hmm.
ever. That is a dream come true for me. And so, my work is very youth based. My work is very, I believe stories are medicine. I believe that stories can heal us. I believe that stories can unite us. And I honestly believe until we start taking control of our own narrative, we'll
Mm-hmm.
never have our power back. And so this is a way for us as a people to reclaim what was taken from us. And that
And
brings me joy.
I love that. I do. Yeah, its stories are definitely medicine. And, that medicine works well in my particular world because I need to get these things off of my chest and I need to get them out of my mind because they fester, they hurt, they cause headaches. I drink too much coffee. And, I just need to, these characters come to me and they have voices and they have things that they want to say, such a super Indian and, his kind of like, nobody likes me and, kind of, because I feel that way myself sometimes. And I thought, I'm sure that a superhero might maybe have that feeling every once in a while. And, the Native community wants to look outside their community and see themselves, but they don't mind taking in Star Wars or Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica or kung fu movies. So I'm going to talk about that kind of stuff because wrestlers, WWE, all that stuff is that's in my family. That's what our family talks about, and just crazy stuff. And I thought, put it out there, just see
Yeah.
and see if it lands. And it did. It has landed.
And there's so many Easter eggs in these episodes, so I'm right here
Yes.
keeping count. Every time I listen to them, I find something new. I was like, oh, that was a reference to that. And it's just so fun for me. And it's actually, there's some intergenerational ones. So I was telling my father about it, and I was like, I don't understand this reference. He's like, oh, I know. I'll tell you about it. And so it really created dialogue between me and my pops. And so I really appreciate that, Arigon.
I feel some
You're welcome.
fanzines coming from this, like trying to dissect your Easter eggs. We do have a question about. There's a lot of questions now. I'll read this one. We have been on a rather forced march from from live to virtual, and it seems like Super Indian is good for vehicle for, I guess, the conversation in regards to live theater versus virtual. But what are we losing by seeing this only in virtual rather than in live theater? What are we gaining?
Ooh, well, this is a movie for your ears. You are going to fill in the images this time. That is on you. You get to decide what Lena Marie looks like or doesn't look like. You get your own version of Super Indian. I mean, he's here over my shoulder, but if you want him to look a little different, yeah, go ahead. It's okay. It's all
Okay.
right. Mm-hmm.
So we are at the 5 minute mark. So I'm going to do a little multitasking. If we can throw up the last image that you have here. I think there's one more image. I look to the side for those that don't know. I've got another screen to the side. I don't have a tick or anything. But there is a question about if you foresee Super Indian getting involved. And this kind of works because it's looking at volume 3. But do you foresee Super Indian getting involved in contemporary social and political issues such as battling the pipeline, violence against Native women, pollution, toxic waste on Native lands?
I'm not sure I'm going to go there because I know that there are other comic book creators that are doing that work probably a lot better than I would because I just get too mad about it, you know. So I'm going to stay on the light side of things because as important as those issues are, it's also important for our kids to see somebody righting the wrongs. And my comic skews kind of younger, but on the other hand, colleges and whatnot have picked up on it, and it's a look into our contemporary life, and I like that. So it's going to be the softer side of Native America, or the funnier side, but with little barbs and things put in there, because I always do that. I'm always on my soapbox, but I keep my soapbox on the down low.
And
So,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and I just wanted to say the image that we're seeing is a teaser comic I did for 2019 San Diego Comic-Con, and I still have a few copies of these. So, check out our Super Indian website. They are reasonably priced at $7.99. I don't know if I can say that, but please check them out. This is a look at Volume 3. What? Yes, Volume 3 is in here, and a little backstory and a little look at all the other comic projects I've been working on.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like that old school down the corner, the little teaser there. I'm like, what's that? Speaking of the future, also, is there more about Laguna Woman?
Oh, yes.
Right? You kind of, I don't want to give away a spoiler, but she finds
others like her.
Others.
Yes. Yes, she's going to be in Volume 3 with her own story.
Okay. And somebody did ask about the future as well, Native Voices. Amazing to see such powerful women engage in this conversation. I thank you for sharing. And now for the question. Where do you see Native Voices going in the future, and what does that growth look like?
Well, I think we've seen a nice bit of it now. So if there's something to be gained from all of this, it's access. I always talk about, as soon as this happened, I went to be with my family to take care of them. My father was on a ventilator for a while, and now he's safe and well, thank God. But it was very important to me to be with my family during this time of COVID. And so when I got to Oklahoma, my parents did not have internet. And because I was working remotely, I needed to have internet. So we had to get satellite internet. But the great thing was, because of virtual schooling, our tribe put in stipends to help our elders have access to internet, especially elders that also had grandchildren. And so one of the reasons we did that was obviously to protect our elders. We don't want our children bringing home anything and getting them sick, because when we lose an elder, we don't just lose a loved one. We lose a culture, a language, a history, ceremonies, and it's very important to us that we keep them safe. And so it was during this time I realized, oh my goodness, my parents have never had internet. They don't know what Netflix is. They have no idea. And so that was when we did like everyone else. We converted to this online streaming platform, and we did our short play festival, and it was open to the public. And for a lot of our actors and our playwrights, it was the first time their family got to see them do what they do. So many of our actors, it was the first time their parents got to see them act, or their grandparents got to see their writing. It was just really beautiful. And also it gave our actors and our playwrights so much more access to other worlds. Because before, if people were curious about a Native play, they'd have to come to Native Voices. But this, you could watch it at home in your pajamas. If you needed to go to the restroom, no one's going to be mad at you for disrupting the film. And so, it's, if you coughed in public, it wasn't going to scare them. Okay, it's just one of those situations where you got to be yourself. And we were able to have a lot of other theater professionals watch, in addition to a lot of other Native communities. And we actually had more people watching than could fit in our physical theater. And so for me, it's about the access. We are finally able to share these stories with the people that we wrote them for. And they're finally able to see themselves represented on stage and have their stories told. And so that's where I would like to see more Native Voices going. I want to see us doing more work in the community. And at the same time, I don't want Native Voices to be the only theater producing Native work. And that's one of the other perks of what happened with the Short Play Festival. We had 9 playwrights that we showcased, and 7, we've already received 7 commissions for those. So that's the most commissions we've ever had.
That's amazing.
From one event. And it's because, different theaters got to tune in and see what Native theater was like and realize, oh, it's not as scary as I thought it was. Oh, there is Native talent. Oh, they can write plays. It's like it was really quite beautiful. And we want more of that.
In our last couple seconds of wrapping up, sorry couldn't get to all of your questions, but this one might be a good one to leave on. And the question is, what do you both hope the audience takes away from the Super Indian episodes? We got like a minute.
I would really like them to take away the fact that there is a beautiful community, that there's humor in our lives, and that we have the power. We do have the power to change. We have the power to make things better.
DeLanna?
Absolutely. That we're still here. We're contemporary people and we're thriving, we're surviving. And I love the humor. I love that you get to see us as real human beings, which people often don't think of us as. They usually think of us as in the past. And I love that we capture that little snippet of what it means to be a Native person today. And I also love that, as Arigon does in these comics and in these episodes, is anyone can be a superhero. If you find something that you want to stand up and fight for, then stand up and fight for it. And your voice is powerful. And that's something I want to resonate with everyone. It's like, don't fear your voice. Don't stand in its way.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great. I think, I'm trying to read my timing here and I don't mind showing you how the sausage is made. But I have that it's time for me to wrap up the Q&A, but any last thoughts? Any final things? Arigon, is there any other teaser or spoiler that you want to share or have us look out for? Or maybe a mention of an Easter egg?
Ooh, there's
an Easter
okay. Yeah, because this one goes straight back to the comics. We were talking about DVDs. Okay, so on the reservation in Leaning Oak, there's a place called the DVD Hut, and it's run by a gentleman named Anthony. And Anthony is Hubert Logan's cousin, and he knows every film from back. He is a cinephile. So if there is any pop culture movie question to be known or asked, and if you need info, he's your guy. You don't need the internet, you just need Anthony.
You just need Anthony. And I did read my timing wrong. So it looks like we do have a couple more questions that we could ask. A lot of people are saying thank you. They can't wait for the next episode. I'm excited too. Yeah, I realize, it's dropping right now, but I'm talking right now. DeLanna, there is a question about Native Voices and being the artistic director. What are some of the high notes that come to mind upon your reflection of the first year? A very interesting first year, but the first year of being the artistic director of Native Voices.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say it's that idea of community, right? So I've always been part of this community. I've always found myself circling back to be part of Native Voices or find my way to be back on that stage. And now I'm at that place where I get to mentor and give, I get to return, I get to give back what was given to me. And so for me, that's a high note. That's something I've always dreamed about doing, is being a blessing so I can bless others. And that's what's happening now. And also we get to tell these amazing stories. We get to lift up all these beautiful Native voices. We get to make them laugh tonight, Arigon. Oh my goodness, our actors, we have a cast of 16 and they are playing 95 characters. 95. So that's another thing you can look out for. Just listen carefully. You might hear a few of the same people playing different parts, and you might, I don't know if we have this happening, but we might have people talking to themselves at times. We'll see. But listen. But that's the fun thing about it, is we get to tell stories. I mean, I feel like I'm just the luckiest person in the world. I get to tell Arigon's story. I get to elevate that voice, and I get to, give people, I help make dreams come true. That sounds really silly, but that's what I do.
I think that's wonderful. Like, not many people can say that, but you do. I believe that you do. Arigon, have you ever thought of doing an animation series?
Why, yes, I have. I would love to see this come to Saturday morning or one of the outlets that do animation these days, and I think it would lend itself really well because of the humor, because of the action, because I chose a bright color palette. Yeah, the kids are going to love it.
Would it be a super Indian animation series, or are you thinking of also?
Oh yeah,
of some sort?
Yeah, there might be a spinoff, but they're also, of course, in the Super Indian universe, lots of different characters that can come in, and there are even some episodes that we have that I have from the archive of the first round that have not made an appearance. We didn't record, like Blood Quantum was an original of the second 6 that didn't get taped, but we did read them on stage and they were quite funny. But like DOG has a friend named Mr. Buddy that comes to visit. He has this whole Carlos Castaneda kind of thing happening. And then Gosh, don't you want to meet Nutria Man? I know I do.
Yes, please.
I
So there's more to come.
I do have a question, and I'm glad that I did read the wrong time on my little cheat sheet about the real superheroes in your comic books. Can you talk about how? So the way that I see your visuals in this, you've got the villains who kind of are the personifications of these stereotypes. You've got the fictional superheroes, and you have the real superheroes, and you juxtapose these images together. So I was wondering, what is the underlining visual message, if there is any, in doing that juxtaposition?
Well, what I have found, being older now, I hate saying that, but I've noticed that a lot of kids don't know Jim Thorpe anymore. They don't know Maria Tallchief. They don't know Will Rogers. There's these heroes that I grew up with, I mean, that were pre my time, but I knew about them, and they did amazing, super duper fantastic things that have yet to be like reachieved or even close to reachieved. Think of all of those Olympic medals. Think about Will Rogers being a star of every media. He was the king of all media back in the 20s and 30s before he died in a plane crash. And Maria Tallchief broke barriers, and the Ballet Russe. He was the muse of Balanchine, for crying out loud. But kids don't know that. And I thought, I need to put this into my book. So there are real super Indians among us. They walk among us even today. So that's the point of having that in the book.
Yeah, that's great. That was when I read about the ballerina. I didn't realize I never heard of her. And then to see all the accomplishments that she did. And I'm glad, yeah, I was wondering, and so I don't read comic books as much. So I was wondering, is this a part of comic books? Do they put in a real life story?
No. No, they don't think to do that because, their cultures are well represented. They don't need to talk about John Glenn or the
Right.
others because everybody knows.
Knows.
They don't know about Maria Tallchief.
Good point. Good point. I have another question for you, Aragon, that came through. Is like, do you get your ideas during the night and get up and write them down and work?
No. They're usually coffee-fueled extravaganzas. Often, I actually get a lot of great ideas from driving. So I'm actually happy I'm here in Oklahoma, because it's 45 minutes to Tulsa. I got a lot of time to think.
Yeah, I was reading another playwright, Diane Glancy, also says she does. She basically starts to build characters as she's writing, or as she's driving, taking these road trips.
Yes.
And then for both of you again, like how important, I know we've touched upon this, but not other opportunity to address it a little bit more directly. How important is it having Native representation in theater? I know very is
I know, like but it's very is the short answer. I think that whenever we see ourselves doing bigger things, it helps us imagine ourselves to dream bigger. Does that make sense? I know for me, when I was a young girl, I kept looking for people that looked like me, and the first person I saw was Sheila Tousey in Thunderheart, and that was the first time I saw anyone that looked like my aunties. I mean, don't get me wrong, I saw like all the old Hollywood westerns. My dad still watches those where people dress up in red skin, and pretend to be. And, but that's all I saw. And that obviously didn't mean anything to me because those were not the people I knew. And so, when my Uncle Wes became an actor, that proved to me that it could be done, that even a small child from the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, could go out and tell stories and be able to make a living. And so that was very exciting to me. And so, representation, I think one of my favorite things that happened this year was during the Short Play Festival. We had the little chat going as people were watching the plays, and it was intergenerational. It would be like, hi, I'm typing this for my grandma. I had to set up the Zoom for her. She doesn't know how to use it. And then it's like, Grandma has this question, and Grandma would ask a question through the child, and the child would, post the question. And then another person's like, hi, I'm answering the question for my grandma. And it was just amazing, this community conversation that was happening. And it reminded me of what it's like to go to a powwow where you see elders all the time intermingling with the youth. And that's something I feel like we haven't been able to do because of COVID. We haven't really been able to engage with our elders. And, that was something that was very important to me. I was just talking about it, just makes me want to cry. But that's who our community is. We're families. And to be able to tell those stories and to bring them back home and have families see themselves on stage is huge.
Yes.
Yes, I totally agree with you, DeLanna, because okay, so I assigned myself this thing to do in addition to doing Super Indian comics and music and stuff, which is to create a century cycle for Native America, because August Wilson did it for African Americans, and we need this for our community real bad, because we don't have, there are plays, but they're not sort of a continuing narrative like August did. And I am such a big fan of his. I mean, he's my guy. And I really want to do that. So I've written The Red Road, which was set in the 70s. And I've written Roundance, which was set in the 50s. And there's another play called Indian Life, which is about a radio show in Norman, Oklahoma from the 40s. And I'm going to keep filling it in. I am going to. I have another idea for a story about a ball player named Moses Yellowhorse, who was a champion in 1920 and had an exhibition game in Shamrock, Oklahoma with Babe Ruth. There was a barnstorming game. Oh, yes, it happened. It was real. And I thought, who goes to ball games? Like my aunties and, they're exactly. Yeah. So many people in our community love baseball, and I want to see that on stage. I do. So It's going to happen.
I've been taking quotes from people throughout me putting on the exhibit, What's Her Story, Women in the Archives. Who goes to ball games? My aunties, I think it's gonna make my quote book. So now I'm in time, and I need to wrap up the Q&A. Apologies for the stumble there. I think I gave Melissa a little bit of a heart attack wrapping up 10 minutes early. Nope, I got it in time. But I want to thank you, Arigon and DeLanna. This has been great. I always enjoy speaking with both of you and speaking about Native voices in general, and really excited to hear Super Indian. And thank you for joining us today at the Artist Salon, and for you there, the attendees, taking the time to hear more about the power of images and Super Indian and Native representation. And you can get the Adventures of Super Indian episodes at the autry.org/Native Voices. This has been, like I said, such a pleasure. I look forward to hearing your story. So my storyline is you can't tell a story without an archive. So to you non-archivists, I'm going to push that towards you and see if that holds water or not. But this has been wonderful, and thank you again. Next Wednesday, please join my colleague Sarah Wilson, the Director of Education, for a unique artist salon highlighting the Autry Classroom Curators and the Mervyn Demali Archives Project. You can register for that at the autry.org/artist salons. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being here. Pleasure and a privilege.
Melissa Cesar, thank you. Arigon, I love you.
Oh.